There's a real need for food banks these days, and it's very difficult to actually pinpoint the reasons why.
But the issues are developing because we see food poverty particularly as something that's developing in the lives of a lot of people within Kirklees. So, for example, in Huddersfield, the number of people seeking food parcels has literally doubled in the last 12 months, from 3,000 to 5,500. So we're trying to wrestle with issues that are affecting more and more people in the area.
We talked specifically about food banks making us feel quite uneasy, that on the one hand, yes, of course, you want to help people that are in need and it's necessary, but at the same time, when we asked when does the sticking plaster become part of the problem, especially when the government then sees that they don't need to do anything because it's all being looked after by somebody else.
The Welcome Centre supports local people in our community, the individuals and families who are desperately in need of food.
Dependency, we felt that the reasons behind dependency on food banks at the moment is down to sort of sanctions, also 0-hour contracts, which are sort of forcing people into difficult situations where they may have work one week but not, for the next.
Well, I think part of the reason for having the conversation today is to look together at some of these things, because the reality is that we're dealing with things that are very complicated, that there's no one single cause and there's no one single simple solution, because if there were, people would have sorted it by now. The reality is that there are lots of causes. So there's things like the stigma that people feel about situations that they're facing. There are issues about benefits being withdrawn, people having benefits withdrawn due to sanctions.
Sanctions being brought in by the government, the economic state of the country.
I'm afraid that the society we live in today doesn't seem to care about ordinary working people, people that are unemployed, people that have been sanctioned.
Individual circumstances of the people who come in.
So we would say we're a food cupboard providing immediate needs, whatever they may be, and yes, it's about feeding the hungry, and that's a practical expression for us as a faith-based organisation.
Yes, we're not a food bank, but what we do is if we run out of food, we have access to the food bank to get stocks. It hasn't happened so far, and hopefully it won't happen in the future.
By offering not just food items, but toiletries and bedding, clothes, other items, but predominantly we give them fresh and dried food and a balanced pack that would last them a week.
So we have to have a system that supports those families and those people that have nothing,
including fruit and vegetables, so we do consider all different aspects of the packs, and we try and make sure that they receive a pack that's suitable for their dietary needs, cultural needs and religious aspects.
And if we have spare supplies, we can pass them on to the food bank so that they can use them.
And actually supporting not only ourselves but the people around us is an expression of our love for God and our response to how God has been gracious and good to us, and the fact that we have a common humanity. And
we can't let them starve. We're the 6th richest country in the world. Why shouldn't we feed these people?
But it might also be signposting to other agencies. It might be providing toiletries or other items of personal hygiene to ensure that human dignity is respected and where necessary restored.
We also keep stocks for what we call emergency rations. We don't give out regular food parcels anymore, but what we do is if somebody comes who is obviously in desperate need and hasn't been able to access, then we do give them an emergency parcel.
We felt that the bedroom tax had caused a lot of people to move around into different areas, so actually sort of that had completely broken down any social network that previously existed. And at the housing market, the reliance more on private landlords, and that being sort of obviously a very short-term housing fix, was also having quite a dramatic impact. And if you're having to move into an alternative home, are the kids then also having to move their sort of school social network as well?
People that come to us aren't living in the lap of luxury. They're coming for help, not for handouts, for help.
Well, unfortunately, I've been made redundant, and for two years I've been vehemently looking for work. And the circumstances that brought me to this position of having to use the food bank is I went out to look for work one morning, and previously they swapped my signing on day time from afternoon to earlier. And I went looking for work, and I was in Dewsbury when I was looking for work, and then I realised I was supposed to go and see them over there at the job centre for an interview, and time elapsed.
In June 2012, I had to move over from incapacity benefit, which I was originally on because I've got an illness, over to ESA, employment and support allowance. I went and had the medical, and even though I had letters from the specialists and from the doctors telling them that I was unable to work.
When I remembered I was supposed to be signing on, driving from Dewsbury, you know what it's like at certain times, very busy, stuck in traffic.
There was no way I could live off £71 a week, and you know, why didn't they try living off £71 a week? They'd got all the proof that I couldn't work, they'd got letters from specialists and that, and they just told me that I had to appeal, that there was nothing they could do.
When I got to the job centre, 5:15, the place was shut. First thing I did in the morning was go down there in person to tell them that, you know I was supposed to come and sign yesterday, but circumstances beyond my control, didn't allow me to, because I was stuck in traffic. When I arrived, it was shut. So this is what I'm telling you, that I've come first thing in the morning to alert you of the reasons why.
I applied at the time for a budgeting loan, and they said that I wasn't on the right benefit to be able to get a budgeting loan, so I couldn't even get any extra money to help me out.
And she automatically told me, you've been sanctioned and you're not going to get money for 4 weeks, and I says, well, I've never known that. I've always been working, and this is my first occurrence, and how can you justify, putting this on me for one offence that I wasn't aware of,
I felt suicidal. If it wasn't for the mission, then I wouldn't know what I would have done. They gave me bus tickets to come down here just so I could get into town and get out and socialise with people. Otherwise I was stuck in the house on my own, and there were times where, yes, I did feel like committing suicide, because nobody should be forced to live on £71 a week when they've got the proof that they were ill.
My first job I was in for 18 and a half years. My last job I was in for 14, nearly 15 years. So I'm not familiar with these circumstances. And then you're telling me, because of one lapse of memory, you're punishing me and giving me no reasonable reason, to me anyway, to say that you've been made aware, but therefore we're sanctioning you because you haven't followed what's been guidelines.
Well, clearly food banks have become an everyday part of life for many people. We clearly need them at one level. People are going hungry, but I think we also need to ask the question, why do we need them? And I think that's something that we at the Mission are trying to do both.
We get families coming in on a Saturday. We've done that over the last few weeks, where people have come in with maybe 2 or 3 children, and maybe benefits are going to kick in the following week, and they simply aren't able to feed their children over the weekend. And so if we don't respond, who will? And that's always the bottom line.
We actually give out packs that are described as kettle packs, where you just have a kettle and that's all you've got, otherwise it's cold food because people have no cookers. This is not uncommon, the situation that people can get. So as far as this place is concerned, we are giving advice.
For someone to be able to come to the Welcome Centre, if they're in crisis, they contact one of the frontline services, maybe the local welfare provision team, the CAB. There are many services that might be supporting them already.
We're very happy to work within established structures and work in partnership with organisations that are better resourced than we are, quite frankly.
The food bank in Dewsbury has only just been set up, but so far we're working very well. We have a very close link with them, we keep in touch with them, and already we've passed things on to them and they've passed things on to us.
And that service will contact us and give us the information that we require for someone to be able to come, and we will do some checks. We will, if someone's been before and why they might have been, and then we will make a decision as to whether it's appropriate for them to have a pack. Sometimes we might require proof of maybe receipts that they've spent money or benefits that have been suspended. Not always, but sometimes we do that to make sure that the referral is valid and that the person is getting all the support that they need.
We thought that sanctions should be removed or reduced, that are just too draconian and forcing people to end up in a desperate situation unnecessarily.
Where I see beyond the soundbite fitting is that we need to look not only to sort of support those who are experiencing food poverty, but to ask those questions about why people are in those situations in the first place. How can we stop people getting into these situations so that people aren't having to rely on crisis support in the way that people are doing at the moment?
To ensure that those who are entitled are receiving that to which they are entitled, because we haven't got the professional expertise to be able to screen people in that way, and nor are we the sort of people who sit in judgment as judge and jury as to whether they can or they can't. We prefer to err on the side of caution and do what we can.
The referral is telephoned into us, and within 20 minutes we can have a pack ready for anyone that needs it. They'll often be in town anyway, sorting out issues, and they will come in, collect the pack and take it home on the same day.
People do not come willingly, largely speaking. Very few people come and are happy to be here. This is not what they want to have to resort to, but circumstances change and people's need seems to be growing.
Some of the difficulties of navigating the benefit system and accessing the benefit system, knowing what you're entitled to, but also knowing how you actually get to receive what you're entitled to. And that not everybody necessarily knows what they're particularly entitled to and how to access it.
So we get people come here and say, I've never been in this situation before, and feel quite embarrassed about asking and often leave in tears, and we do what we can.
The Welcome Food Bank at Huddersfield, I've seen the number of food parcels soar almost double every year. And it's the same here, and it's the same nationally. Why? Well, there's lots, I suppose. I can be here all night.
Coming for a food parcel here, I originally felt guilty because I didn't want to rely on anybody else. I've always worked all my life, ever since I was 16, and I've never had to rely on anybody else. So I felt guilty, I felt ashamed that I had to get to that point.
Because sooner or later it had to come out into the open that earning £7 an hour is not going to be enough to support a family.
We get mums and dads who are desperately trying to support their own children and their grandchildren.
But it also taught me a lesson in humiliation, that anybody can get to that point where all of a sudden they've got not everything, but they've got their needs met, and then all of a sudden it's taken away from them, and they have got to rely on other people. And I found that very hard, having to rely on other people.
So we were thinking about the issue of social poverty, as well as food poverty and financial poverty, the poverty of just being isolated. And we're thinking that actually once people get to that point, things have actually gone too far.
We get all ages, male, female, we get families.
You come in for a handout, it makes you feel like you're a failure, even though it's not down to you personally. The economy and the way the world is at the moment is pushing even the most wealthiest people into positions where they're not comfortable with. And that's what it makes me feel like. It makes me feel like a failure. I've got grandchildren and, you know, and children that you don't want to be going cap in hand, really.
A crisis might occur, debts, benefits issues, relationship breakdowns, utility bills, domestic violence issues. They come, as well as people who do have substance abuse issues and maybe an ex-offender or someone with difficulties. We have a wide variety of people who come for help.
It's all about self-respect and honour, and that's the way I've been brought up. You to be the provider, not the other way around.
What Britain really needs, and I mean the working people, and not just people on benefits, though they should rise too, but Britain needs a pay rise. You know, it really, really does. Britain needs a pay rise. I'm fed up of talking to people who are on minimum wage, which almost become the norm now.
It's not just students or young guys who are on £7 an hour. I know people who've worked at a supermarket for 20 years and they're on £7.20 an hour. Sooner or later it had to break out that this just isn't enough to survive.
But the gap between the minimum wage and the living wage is ever growing. And that we should scrap the minimum wage and it should be paid on a living wage.
People on the line are just like me or you, but perhaps with a few less pretensions. So it's a human thing and it's good.
There's always been the need for food banks. It just wasn't that word. Food banks wasn't the word that was used.
The message I would give to anybody that is in difficulty is there is help out there. You don't have to be on your own. Come down the mission, we will help you. We will help you with food, we will help you with gas and electric and bus fares if you need it to go to hospital appointments and things like that. There's people here that won't judge you. They will accept you as a person, and we will do as much as we possibly can to help you. And if we can't help you, we know somebody that can. The mission has now helped me to become more confident, and because of that now I actually do volunteer work for them 2 days a week on the reception, because my philosophy has always been that if somebody helps you, you help them back. And I can't do a lot for them, but the least I can do for their help to me is to help them back, and that's what I'm doing.
I appreciate the fact that the food bank is there for them that really, really need it, or put into positions where they're not in control. Not only that, it lets you know that all is not that bad. There is something at the end of the line if you warrant it.
When I first walked into the mission, what the mission gave me when I was at my lowest and ready to top myself, if you like, I felt the sense of relief that somebody was actually going to help me, because I didn't feel at the time that anybody would help me.
And it's good that people know that, you know, they can come here, put something back into the community after they've had, what shall we say, their little twopence or their little crumb from it. Just to say, thank you, you were there when I needed you, I'd like to give someone back.
I'd like to see, for instance, the Church of England that owns 100,000 acres of land, think about whether it could start setting up farms where it could teach skills and grow things and rear livestock and create stuff for the market. I think there's huge opportunities there.
Through coming here to the food bank, I've been trying to get involved into doing some voluntary work. I've spoken to Sam in regards to getting on the rota to doing some voluntary work in return for the help that I've received.
Thank you.